So as you are looking at your C13, any questions as I'm looking at these first 30 that you're not sure about? Answers were in the back, so you could have checked those. Any ones that as you look at that you're not sure about, you'd like me to take a look at as you look at this first part. 24, we are not going to worry about that one at all. It's really a...
It's not Krishna.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yep. And then there's sorry. Okay. So when you are looking at this number 3, this one we're looking at, Devin? This one? The second part?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I think of this is really 6 to the first, and then I have 6 to the negative 4. So since I have the same base with my exponents, I should be adding those.
Why is he doing 3? That's only even.
I know. He asked that number 3, so I'm going to answer it. So if I'm looking at that, I should have had 6 to the negative 3, which is equal to 1 over 6 to the third. Okay? So if we're seeing one like that. Now, number 6 here, when I take 0 times something, I should have got 0 for an answer as I was doing that. Okay? Other questions on your review as you are looking at these before we look at what's on the test? One thing that I notice is sometimes when people are not correcting all theirs and the answers are in the back, and then you go to take the test, and then I get kind of like an email of, hey, I can't believe my kid did that terrible, but when I look at what you hand in, you didn't correct the review. And if you're not correcting the review, it's probably not going to go, you're probably going to make those same mistakes on the test. So as you are looking at those. All right. So I'm handing back the quiz. So I want you to take a look at that right now. We want to try and look at what mistakes people made as they were looking at that. So I just got a couple left. And Elizabeth, Aaron, Sammy. So when I looked at this quiz, this is, and I got it. So when I looked at this quiz, this is what I was looking at for your grade on this. I was looking at question number 1, and as I looked at that, I should have seen that you multiplied the 2 numbers together. So when you multiply the 1.09 times 2.79, I should have had an answer of 3.0411. And then I should have added the exponents 2 plus 1 and got 10 to the third. Already in scientific notation, done with that question. Okay? When I take a look at this next one, I should have taken on my calculator 3.38 and I should have divided it by 7.8. And when you do that, you get 0.433 times 10, and you take 6 minus 4, which gives us 10 to the second. And if you left this answer, I probably took off a point, because you did not, at this point, change it to scientific notation. And the answer should have been, if I was looking at that, 4.33 times 10 to the first. A lot of you, when you added this one, you got the common power of 10 to the 6. So if I'm looking at this 10 to the 6, the 3.38 stays as it is, but this is telling us to move it 4 places. So I now have to go 5, 6. It should have been 0.078 that you were then adding together to get a solution of 3.458. And then for some reason, there was a few people that changed this. They had 6 here, 6 here, and they put a 4 here. So that's wrong in the answer. It had to be times 10 to the 6. The last one is probably the one where I saw a lot of mistakes, and so tomorrow, Wednesday when we take your test, again, making sure how you're putting this in your calculator, but it should have been 4.8 to the negative 3 times 10, and then you were taking negative 3 times negative 3. When you take a power to a power, that is multiplying those, that is 10 to the 9. Now, depending on how your calculator shows this part, if it shows it as a decimal, you would have had 0.00904. Karen, you want to do me a favor and shut the door? If yours came out in scientific notation, you might have had 9.04 times 10 to the negative 3. And I would have taken this answer or this one for your work, but neither one of those is your answer. Your answer is 9.04 times 10. This one was telling us to move it 9 places. I don't have to move it as far if it's over here. I only have to move it 6. Or you could have added the negative 3 plus the 9 and got 6. But this was the answer for that last one. So when you take a look at that quiz to make sure that you are understanding those, take a look at them, ask questions. Tomorrow on the test, what are we going to be filling in? So this is that last page of your notes, if there weren't any more questions. So, when is our test? Our test is Wednesday, 11/9. It is 15 questions. So this is that last page of your notes. 15 questions. Tomorrow we get our new notes. We're going to start looking at that new unit. And it is 60 points. What am I looking at for your test? I want you to look at the poster over here. And these are the 3 areas that are on your test. So I know in your notes, there are like 6 areas going down. So in the first one, put this, then skip a box, then put this one down as your next standard. So I know you have 6 boxes going down in the first one. So if you were going to read that, Noah, would you read what it says up there?
I can apply exponent properties to a simple expression.
So this is your first standard. I can apply exponent rules or properties to simplify. That's what our whole first quiz was on when we had that 50-point quiz a couple weeks ago, where you had to simplify with exponents. So simplifying the expression. If I was looking at your homework that you were doing, this is really when I look at C13, C14, that's what you were doing. It's the first units C1 through C6 that we did. There are going to be 8 questions. Most of them are 4 points each, which means you get 32 points on exponent rules, over half the test. Okay. So how you did on that last quiz and how you were practicing and reviewing, and some of you came in and did a retake on some of that, you're going to be looking at that. So I would really look at C13 and C14 as you do your review, and make sure that you understand all of it. Make sure you're correcting it. Make sure the answers make sense, okay? The second, within that part where you're simplifying, so there'll be like 6 questions where I'll just say simplify. That means no negative exponents, no same variable in the numerator and denominator, no telling me x to the 4th times x to the 5th when you could tell me x to the 9th in simplest form. You're going to have a problem here, so that's 6 of the questions. One of the questions is going to ask you to find the mistake. Tell me who did theirs wrong. I'm going to show you the work of 2 people doing a problem. And I'm going to say find the mistake, kind of like the 9B, okay? So of the 8 questions, 6 of them are just going to be simplified. 1 is find the mistake, so that's like that 9B worksheet that I'm asking that you turn in today. If you haven't turned that in, I want that in today so I can correct it. And then 1 question is going to ask you to simplify. And then after you simplify, it's going to say, show the expanded, show it's gonna say justify your answer is what it's written on the test, so I'll make sure I use the same words. It says justify your answer using expanded form, is what the test says. So justify your answer using expanded form. So it might be a power to a power, it might be a multiplication, or it might be a division problem. So like example, if I said 4x to the third power times 4x to the second power. Okay? Let's just make it x to the third and x to the second. And I'll answer your question in just a minute. Can you not read something I wrote? Okay. So, if we are looking at this problem and I have x to the third times x to the second, yep.
Is this left in the block in a different box?
I would say you can either have, this is kind of like maybe the first two boxes that you might have. This is all what's like on this standard, okay? So if I'm looking at this first standard, these two things, this is the standard, and then this is all the stuff that these are the 8 questions, what they kind of look like. So when I look at this one, most of you would have said, oh, the rule is add 3 plus 2 and get x to the 5th. And you'd probably just leave me this answer, x to the 5th. If I have to justify it, so if I'm doing this part of it, where it says justify your answer, this is what I would be looking for. I would look for that you show me, oh, x to the third means x times x times x, and x to the second means 2 more x's, which if I look at that, I have 5 x's, and that shows why the addition of the exponent works. So that is the justifying in expanded form, okay? So we are now looking at your next standard down. Maya, would you read on the blue poster up there on the top, would you read the next standard that it says? So I can represent and compare. What that means is you're going to be asked to write the numbers in scientific notation or in standard form, and then you have to say, oh, this one is greater or this one is larger, or smaller or larger, okay? And you got to be able to say why. So I can represent the numbers, I can represent and compare the numbers using decimal. And remember, decimal notation is really the standard form. So decimal notation, which is really standard form, or scientific notation. There are 3 questions with 12 points. When I ask you to write a number in scientific notation, I might say, okay, this number is in scientific notation, and if I was writing, tell me why you have a negative or positive exponent, okay? What do I know about using positive and negative exponents in scientific notation? When do I use negative exponents in scientific notation? What kind of numbers am I talking about? Anyone have an answer? What kind of numbers in scientific notation have times 10 to a negative power? Like if I have, what kind of numbers am I starting out with in decimal notation? Big or small? Small, right? Kennedy, like what? What kind of number would have a negative exponent? Give me an example of a decimal small number.
So like 0.00312.
And I can even just go with 0.00. If I was looking at this, right, I would put down 3 times 10. This would be to the negative 3 if I wrote it in scientific notation. I'm going to ask you on the test, write it in scientific notation. Then I'm going to say, why did you use a negative exponent? Or I might give you a large number, like say 100, and say, why did you write that as 1 times 10? Why did you use a positive exponent? So you got to be able to justify it. You got to be able to explain the why. Oh, we use positive exponents when we're working with large numbers. We use negative exponents when we're working with decimals or fractions with smaller numbers, right? So the reason why you're doing that, okay? The last standard, as you are looking up there. Kenny, do you want to read the last standard on the poster?
I can perform operations using decimal and scientific notation.
So this is like your quiz. So I can perform, and we are mostly looking at all the operations, add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and they're going to be in story problems. So I can perform operations using scientific notation. And it says using decimal and scientific. So you can kind of go between the two and scientific notation. There are 4 questions. And so I have some people thinking that I must have one of each type. And I will tell you that there's 2 that repeat the same kind of problem. Like, so there might be 2 multiply, there might be 2 add, there might be 2, okay? But there's 4 of them. And the reason I did that is because if I only put down, I say you have to do add, subtract, multiply, and divide, everyone thinks those are the 4 things, right? And they don't think, oh, there might be 2 multiply and no subtraction, or there might be a multiply, 2 divisions, and an addition problem, right? So I just want you to make sure you really read the problem. There is not one of all 4 operations. I just want you to be aware of that, okay? But each one of those, again, there's 4 questions, it's 16 points on the test Wednesday. So when I am looking at those types of questions, this is very much like C12 worksheet, that review. I tried to point out ones to make sure you go over this one, really look at this. And if you want tonight after school, tomorrow morning, tomorrow after school, our test is Wednesday. And the reason I did that is you can turn in today, I really want the 9B. And if you want to turn in 12 today, you finish that, you got to put your name on that second page. You can turn that in today, okay? If you're turning in the 12, it should have the back page, the first page of 13 on it, okay? And then today in class, you are working on C14 and it's 14B. And I had someone say, well, what about 14A? If I am looking at this, 14A is actually going to be bonus, so you could do 14A. You must do 14B, and then I need all the 9B and 12 turned in also. Today, before you leave, 9B must be turned in. I put again on the daily planner, Quizlet with the exponent rules, Quizlet with practicing scientific notation. This website gives you more practice questions that you could go to. So you just need to, if you're done with the work, you could go to this the next 2 days. Because tomorrow, this assignment that we're going to do when we start introducing the solving equations, it's really not due until the following day. So it's not due till Thursday of this week, what we do tomorrow in class on this unit D when we start D1. So the key thing is to study and get ready for this test. I'm really not looking for a retake on this test. I'm looking for you to be prepared. We've had lots of days of reviewing. I did not have too many people in here this morning during advisory getting help. So which means either you're probably understanding or you're in music, but this one is a huge music day, okay? So in the next couple of days, I'm here at 8 in the morning. Make sure you're getting in and getting help. Questions on, so you are going to be finishing today doing 14. As you do it, check your answers.